Okay, here we go with a different camera shot, and we open the pot up, and you see how nice and flat that bottom is. And I'm going to make it even a little bit more flat. Just run my finger back and forth between center and about 3 o'clock on the wheel head. A nice flat bottom allows me to pull up the walls. Okay, that was done. The opening part was done at a little bit medium speed, medium fast. For the pulling, I'm going to wipe the water on to the clay with my sponge to control how much water I put on there. If I put too much water on at this point, I can get the walls too soft and they'll be hard to work with. Now the main concept in pulling is to squeeze, freeze, and pull. And what I mean by that is I'm going to squeeze the clay together, freeze that squeeze, and I'm going to pull it up. Okay? And when I say freeze, I don't mean freeze how much tension that I have here, or strength. I mean the distance between my fingers. So if I do this just with one hand, it looks like this. I'm going to squeeze, freeze that squeeze, and then slowly pull up. Notice that the clay wall gets taller. Pretty neat, huh? Alright, I'll add some more water on there. And I'm going to show you a different method of doing it. So no matter what you do, squeeze, freeze, and pull. So here, I'm going to do what I call the butterfly method. So I'm going to cross my thumbs, my elbows are down, and I call it the butterfly because that's what you do on a shadow puppet, right? So here I want to use my 2 middle fingers, and I'm just going to put one on the inside, one on the outside at about 3 o'clock on the right hand side of the wheel head. Even if you're left-handed, you want to do it this way. You're going to squeeze, freeze that squeeze, and then pull that squeeze up. When I come up to the top, remember that wave of pressure, gentle release. So it's just like magic, it just grows. Now notice the shape is kind of like a volcano now. We went from a funnel to now kind of like a volcano. But if we looked on the inside, it's pretty close to straight up and down on the inside. So this is the hardest thing to do when you're making a pot as a beginner, is to make a tall cylinder. A cylinder that's taller than it is wide. Alright, but if you try and throw it towards the center and have it come up like a volcano, that'll help you out. Alright, now I'm going to do a different method, and it's still the same thing, and this time I'm going to use my thumb into the first joint of my finger, and I'm going to use my middle finger on the inside and still do that squeeze, freeze the squeeze, and pull. But I'm going to use the sponge right over my fingertip here. So my sponge right here is going to work right over my fingertip and act like that. That way I can get a little bit extra water pressure on there. Squeeze, freeze, and pull. Nice and slow, nice and steady. Gentle release. If I just squeeze out a little water right on the top of the rim, it works down both sides. I think I have one more pull left in this, so we'll do that. Now here I can't touch my thumb tips together, so I'm just going to stay as steady as possible, keep my elbow in towards my body, and as soon as I can touch them together, I will. Alright, so once you've got this pulled up, you want to try and maintain about a 1/4 inch thickness. And this is a little bit more than a 1/4 inch thickness right here. So the top should be a little bit thicker, but everywhere else it should be about a 1/4 inch thickness. I'm going to use the square edge of my tool to push up against the clay. I'm going to hold on to it tightly. My elbows are down. And that gets rid of excess clay down here. Then I'm going to reach my hand down in. I might need some water. I'm going to reach my hand down in, and I'm going to use this straight edge of the tool to help shape it. And I push my finger on the inside up to the straight edge of the tool on the outside. And you can follow right along where that shapes. And so if I want this clay to go out, I push out more with my inside finger than I push in with my outside hand. And I can just tip this back a little bit. And it goes just like that. Just remember, take a little bit at a time. Don't get too greedy with it. If I want it to go back in, that's a lot harder to do. So I want to try and leave it narrow where I want it narrow. Now at this point, I've got to get all the water out of the bottom. So I'll take my sponge and reach it down in there. Just kind of wipe that water up. And we'll just make a small vase out of this one. So one way to make it narrow is to just get your hands nice and wet and just push in a little bit. In this case, I've made 3 points of pressure, and then I use these 3 points of pressure on this hand. So these 3 and these 3, and that just pushes it right in. So with this straight edge, I can make outside curves, and then I can turn it and make inside curves. If I go flat on the top here while supporting the sides, it makes a nice thick rim. Thick rims give a pot a look of sturdiness. I can use that sponge to fold over the top and soften those corners. I can do some decoration on here by using, let's use the rib here, and we'll use the corner edge of this rib to cut a line in there. We'll bend that rim right over that. That makes kind of two different areas to the piece. It makes a neckline in there. Just refine this curve a little bit. And then I can take the pointy end of this and push it in down here. And that cuts a little bit of a foot down in there. It gives me kind of a start for when I want to trim it. Or, as in the case of my last vase that I pulled off, the taller one, it can just be the finish of it. We'll smooth those lines out a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good to me. The last thing I'll show you is a little bit of fancy decoration. Again, if we use the square edge of this, we don't have to press very hard. I'm going to slow the wheel way down. And I'm going to just put a little bit of pressure on, enough to make a line there. Then I'm going to come down here, a little bit of pressure on, just enough to make a line there. Then I'm going to double that line by making one right next to it. And the same thing up top here. Now, I'll make a nice squiggly design inside here. So what I'm going to do is move my tool up and down. Notice I'm still supported with my elbows on my knees or my legs, and my hands are together, making a nice triangle strength there. So I'm going to just move this up and down steady until I feel like it's nice and steady, and then I'm just going to press it onto the clay. And there you go. Kind of a neat decoration on there. Alright, that's how you throw a pot according to Mitch Sigmund. So good luck, good potting.